This morning we're going to continue our series looking at the 23rd Psalms, and there are 7 causes of stress mentioned in the 23rd Psalms, and God gives us answers to each one of them. Last Sunday we looked at worry and how worry can cause stress. Today we're going to be looking at busyness and how busyness can cause stress into your life. And then we're going to work our way right around through the circle there. Busyness. Wow, a lot of us are busy. In fact, some of you have probably already checked out your watch and said, well, I know he normally preaches about a half hour. That's going to get us out about this time. And I got to go take care of the trash today. And there's all kinds of stuff that needs to be taken care of. And we're all worried about it. Well, I was thinking that today, this would be a good one to talk about busyness, in fact, because some of you are worried about getting home and getting your lunch and doing other things, and they've got lunch all prepared for you. So you guys will be ready for lunch by the time that we're finished here. They're probably, some of them are back there cooking it right now, so it should be all set and ready. Well, some people think that the opposite of busyness is laziness. Now, I could preach a whole series on laziness, and that's a whole nother issue. But the opposite of busyness is not laziness. If you sit at home all day watching TV or playing on the computer and you don't have a medical issue, that's lazy. That's something completely different than what we're talking about. And sometimes, in fact, your laziness can create busyness. You've been lazy all week long, and then comes time to get something done, and now you've got to run around, and you're so busy you don't have time to do everything, and then something else pops up. There's always an emergency that pops up when you're busy, and now you're not able to help somebody or do something else that you should be doing because you were so lazy throughout the week. I'm not saying that to you guys, but I'm saying that certainly happens. I know there's times that I've put things off and procrastinated and just sitting back and relaxing when I could be doing something. But today we're talking about busyness. Busyness. Sometimes we're busy just for the sake of being busy. I don't know how many of you do this, and I'm telling you, I am like this. And when I work out my calendar through the week, I see a couple of hours of free time in there, and I think I've got to jam something in there. I've got to find more to do. Keep being busy being busy. Well, I found a poem that I want to read to you and kind of help you understand our clip art that we're going to use. Can you go ahead and go to that next one? That little bee. Ever heard of the busy as a bee? Well, here's a poem that I found on the internet this week. It says, "Hello, little busy bee, always flying through the midnight breeze. Why are you still awake? Don't you have a bed to make? Oh no, don't fly into the trap, busy bee. You are so tired you cannot see. I'm so sorry, my busy bee, but he just won't let you free." I think sometimes we can get so busy being busy that we fly into traps and we have no relief from the trials and the pressures that we come across. This week, I had kind of sent out an email telling everybody everything that's going on. By the way, if you didn't get my email update, give me a slip of paper with your email address on it, and I will send that out to you and make sure that you're aware of what's going on in the life of the church. I like to try to keep people up to date with things that are taking place, and if you didn't get one this week, I sent one out. That means I don't have your email address, so we can take care of that. But I did say, today we're going to continue our series on stress, and we're going to be talking about busyness. And I got an email from Scott Govitz that says, "Can you please not bother me? I'm busy." This is make fun of Scott Sunday. But we all live in such a fast-paced world. By the way, when I first got that, I was like, oh my God. And then I thought, oh, he's doing a play on what we're talking about. I wasn't quite sure at first. But we all live in a fast-paced world that is filled with daily pressures. And at times there aren't enough hours in a day to get all the work done that we hope to accomplish. But here is a little quiz to find out if you're a workaholic. Are you always in a hurry? Is your to-do list always unrealistically long? Do you use your day off to catch up on unfinished work? Have you been told by more than one person you should slow down? Do you feel guilty when you try to relax? Do you have to get sick in order to take time off? You know, this is not the kind of life that God wants us to live. I like what Psalms 127 verse 2 says. It is useless for you to work so hard from early morning until late at night, anxiously working for food to eat. For God gives rest to his loved ones. It is not God's will for us to burn the candle at both ends. In Psalms 23, and this is the psalm that we're looking at for the next 7 weeks, in verse 2 it says, He makes me to lie down in green pasture. He leads me beside the still waters. I know that one time, I may have shared this before, that I worked myself to exhaustion and ended up in a hospital room, and someone came up to me and said, He maketh me to lie down. Either you're going to take the rest that God intended for you to take, or He is going to make you to lie down. And many times when the Lord has to make you lie down, that's not the way that you want to rest, and it's not very enjoyable. David here in this psalm is referring to times of rest. If we were a sheep, we would understand that this is for a picture of a perfect paradise for us. It's green pastures and quiet, still waters. It refers to rest and refreshment. It's a necessity for the growth and the well-being of a sheep. You know, that's what the psalmist is talking about all through this passage, is the relationship that a shepherd has with a sheep. And here in this passage, he makes us to lie down. It refers to rest and refreshment necessary for us. In other words, God doesn't want us to work and to strive constantly. In a recent CNN poll, it recently showed us that 59% of Americans would like to slow down and relax more. Wouldn't we all? Wouldn't we all want to be able to just slow down and relax from time to time? But another poll shows that we have 8.5 less hours of leisure time in a week than what we had a decade ago. We're working more and enjoying it less. Well, this morning I want to look at a prescription for pressured people. God's way for us to relax, if you will. And what I want to do is to take the letters of the word relax and kind of break them down one by one to help us to know that how we will be able to relax. Number one, the first thing that we need to do is realize our worth. Realize our worth. The reason that most people tend to overwork is because they confuse their worth with their work and what their work can obtain for them. You know, basically material things. We want the stuff, right? Isn't that what we want? We want more stuff. We need more things. And a lot of times what we do is we go out and we buy our things, and for the people that aren't real good at math, they use their credit card for all that stuff, and then they spend the next 6 months trying to pay for all that. By the way, now would be a good time to remember that Christmas is coming up. And we know that we're going to want to buy some more stuff with Christmas. You know, I think some of us would be wise to remember that it's always best to save up for that stuff that you buy at Christmas, not go and put it on the plastic card and then spend the next 6 months trying to pay off all the stuff that you bought at Christmas time. Well, many people, they confuse what they have with what they are worth. That is easily perceived, for that is exactly the attitude of the present society. Many of us today have more as far as material possessions than our parents did. Many young people, when they get married, they want to have everything in their home that mom and dad spent a lifetime of accumulating. They want it, and they want it right now. They didn't realize that mom and dad had to work all those years. Grandparents understand this. This is Grandparents' Day. They understand that you don't get everything right now. You save up and spend a lifetime of getting things and having things. But not my generation. Man, we want it now, and we don't want to wait. And so somehow our worth gets tied up in things. And the first thing that we need to do is to realize that our worth is not based on our material possessions. Perhaps we're determined to be more and have more, but there's something dangerous about material things if we're not careful. The more we have, the more we want, and we're seldom satisfied or thankful for the things that we have. We tend to determine our worth and even others' worth by the value of the things that they have. So in order to have more, we work more. Let's look at what the Scripture says about this. In James 1:18, it says, "We are the first fruits of all that God created." See, our importance is not in the things that we possess. Our importance is simply us. It is us without anything added to us. In Luke chapter 12, verse 15, it says, "A man's life consists not in the abundance of things he possesses." I know a man who thinks that he needs to spend his money on his friends. He needs to buy his friends everything in order that he might be able to have friends. He's constantly buying them things to obtain their friendship. We don't have to prove our worth. We're eternal beings, made in the likeness and image of God. God gave His only begotten Son to die for our sins. We're sons and daughters of the King of Kings. We're worth more than the things that we possess. For one day, every material thing will pass away, but you and I will live forever. Matthew chapter 6, Jesus talks about how God takes care of the sparrows of the field, and God feeds them and knows when they fall. And Jesus adds that we are of much more value to God than they are. It's not what we have in the bank that declares our worthiness. It's what's on the inside of us that determines our value. So we don't have to work our lives away just so that we can have more stuff, so that we can feel good about ourselves. In Isaiah 49, it says that God said, "I have engraved you on the palm of my hand." That's how much you are worth to God. Now, the next thing that I want us to look at is the E in relax. It's enjoy. Enjoy what we already have. I think it's amazing that people have so much stuff that they don't even get to enjoy the things that they already have. Now, and I just thought of a good example of someone in this room, and I'm not going to embarrass them, but do you have stuff, items, I'll say it like this, sitting in someone else's garage that you haven't used in years? Or sitting in some storage unit somewhere that we've got stuff and stuff and stuff. I remember when I first got married, I had this box of T-shirts, and this is just one example, but I'm sure there's probably others. I had this box of T-shirts, that there were all these T-shirts that I had from when I was growing up, and they meant something to me from being on like the cross-country team and wrestling team and different things. And I put these shirts in this box, and I taped it up, and it said, Martin's special T-shirts or something. I put it in a box, stuck it down in my basement, and there it sat. And then we moved from one church to a next church, and I just kept that T-shirts right in that box. We moved it to the next church, stuck it in a box, never even opened the tape, still sitting there. And then we moved to another church, and then another church, and then we moved here. And I was looking at this box full of T-shirts that had been taped 15 years earlier that I never even opened or looked at. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. and finally decided, and I moved them here, and as soon as we got them out and into my garage here, I'm like, these are not going into storage. We need to get rid of them. How many of you got stuff like that you're not even able to enjoy? It's just stuff. And we're so worried about getting more stuff that we can't enjoy the stuff that we already have. Well, we got a lot of stuff. I like what it says in Ecclesiastes 4:6. It says, better to have one handful with quietness than two handfuls with hard work and chasing the wind. Is that what we do sometimes? As pastor, I've been to a lot of funeral processions, and never once have I seen a U-Haul truck carrying all the earthly possessions of deceased behind the hearse. That just doesn't happen. You don't get to take your stuff with you. You know what I have seen, though? I've seen families that are so torn apart as they argue about who gets what, and who gets this item from mom and dad, and who gets this from grandma and grandpa, and they're just so torn up about all this stuff. Paul wrote in Philippians 4:11, I have learned in whatever state I'm in to be content. Have you learned to be content? I've seen so many people fight over deceased parents' estate that I finally just said, Mandy and we discussed and said, you know what? We don't care if we get anything. I do not want to allow stuff to come between my relationship with my brothers and sisters. And if it was to come between me and them, they can have all of it. Wouldn't want anything, because my relationship is more important than stuff. See, I said, this sermon's going to hit home for some people today, one way or another. And some of you, you've been there. You've been through that. You know how relationships are easily broken because we get so consumed with getting our fair share. Listen, that was mom and dad stuff. You didn't work for any of it. None of it was your share. Your share is what you've worked for and what you've earned, and even that belongs to the Lord, if you're living right. Well, L, limit our labor. Limit our labor. Make time for other things besides work. God needs some of our time. When a person is too busy for God, they're too busy. If we're too busy for God, we're just too busy. Our marriages need some of our time. Our children need some of our time. Our church needs some of our time. God gave us a great example in the beginning of creation. It says in Genesis chapter 2, the very beginning of the Bible, chapter 2, says, so the creation of the heavens and the earth and everything in them was complete. And on the seventh day, God had finished his work of creation, and so he rested from all his work. And then God held a day of rest also for his people. In Exodus chapter 20, it says, 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord, and in it you shall not do any work. We need to rest. We can't just, work our lives away. And there's so many people that are so busy. Work. Never taking time off for the Lord. Never taking time off for the family. And I know a lot of times growing up, this was a message for dads. Dads, this is something that dads have dealt with. But anymore, it's just a message, for moms as well, that we get so busy that we neglect the families. Well, God commands us to rest. That's the fourth commandment. It's one of the big 10. You know the 10 commandments? To have rest is number 4 in that list. And, it's right along with the other big ones, like not committing murder and, not committing adultery. This sounds serious to God. He really means this. And 1 day out of 7, we should take a day of rest for our bodies. In Mark chapter 2, verse 27, and then Jesus said to them, the Sabbath was made to meet the needs of people, and not people to meet the requirements of the Sabbath. God, in his divine wisdom, made that decision, that people should have an opportunity to rest, to relax, to take a day off. Ecclesiastes 10:15 says, a fool's work wearies him. He does not know the way to the city. In other words, the wise man, Solomon said, is dumb to work all the time. You can't work all the time. You've got to take some time to do things that will relax. And I found this story. It's kind of humorous, I guess, for a pastor. Maybe you won't find it funny. But it says a lady called her pastor one day really upset. She said, I called all day Monday and I couldn't get through to you. The pastor replied, well, Monday is my day off. And the lady answered, well, the devil never takes a day off. And the pastor replied, yes, ma'am, and if I didn't take a day off, I'd be just like the devil. Right. Sometimes the pastor needs a little rest as well. If we don't rest our bodies, then our bodies will find a way to rest themselves. They are not machines that you can replace a worn out part and keep on going and going. Not only does our bodies need rest, but our spirits also need rest. The Bible calls this worship. We're not just fleshly bodies walking about. We're also spiritual beings, and our spirit needs a rest. Our spirit needs to relax. Our spirit needs to be refreshed. And without worship, we fall apart spiritually. Now, only by drawing nigh to the Lord in worship can we get strength and survive some of the things we are called upon to encounter. Worship offers us the opportunity to recharge our emotions. Well, the next thing that we need to do is adjust our values. Adjust our values. Jesus tells us a very important story in Luke chapter 12, verses 16 through 21. He says this. In Luke 12, it says, and he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. And he thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. And then he said, this is what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. And there I will store my surplus grain. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be for whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich towards God. See, this man's barns were getting fuller and fuller, and his biggest problem in life was to build bigger barns and keep building bigger and bigger. And Jesus calls this man a fool. He was foolish not because he had an abundance, but because he was probably a hard-working man. But he was foolish because his abundance of material things was all his life to him. It meant everything to him. And he was going to store it up for himself. Well, in Deuteronomy 6:12 it says, be careful that you do not forget the Lord who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. And remembering the things that we have, let us keep in mind that it is the Lord that has given us all that we have. And all that we have ultimately belongs to Him. This is, two of the most important scriptures in the Bible. There in Deuteronomy 6:12 and also in Mark 8:36, and talking about things. For what shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or in 1 Timothy 6:10, for the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil, and some people craving money have wandered from the true faith and pierced themselves with many sorrows. The final thing that we need to do is to exchange our pressure for God's peace. I think this gets to the root of the problem that we have. There's three kinds of stress and fatigue. There's the physical fatigue, the emotional fatigue, and the spiritual fatigue. If it's just the physical fatigue, then a good vacation could be the cure. But a vacation won't help emotional and spiritual fatigue. When you return from the vacation, the very same problems are there waiting for you. You know, sheep do not just lie down. David said, He makes me to lie down in green pasture. He makes me to lie down. Sometimes we need to force ourselves to just slow down and take a rest. I don't know how many of you are dealing with this in your life. Maybe you're like the sheep that just keeps going and going and will keep going forever until it just falls over dead. If that's how we are, and then we're not good for anything. You know, if we're laying in a hospital bed because we're just suffering from exhaustion, then we're not good for anything. And so a lot of times that this busyness causes a lot of unnecessary stress in our life. Some of us, we get busy because we're people pleasers and we don't know how to say no to anything. Are there some people like that out there? You just say yes to everything and you keep doing more and more and more. And you can't stop because you want to please everybody and you never have any time off to sit back and relax and take it easy. Well, sometimes one of the things we might need to do is get our priorities in order. Not everything is important. And some things are important, but you don't necessarily have to do that. I know there's a lot of things that take place even within the church that I see as being very important, but I have nothing to do with it. For example, we got a group of ladies, some of them sitting right up here, some over here, that meet every Wednesday morning, and they write cards to people. Maybe people that have been absent, maybe people that have been sick, and I think it's a very important ministry. I have nothing to do with that ministry. Our missions group, I think they just met this past week and talked about all the things that are taking place in missions. I have nothing to do with that group. I promote it. You know, everybody thinks that I'm the one that does all this, but I don't do any of it. The missions department puts that together. And so, you know, even as the pastor, I don't try to get involved in everything. I'm not back in the back right now cooking your hot dogs. Matter of fact, I had nothing to do with that. I didn't set up a table. I didn't put up the chairs. I didn't cook any of the food. I can't do everything, right? And you can't do everything. A lot of times you're trying to do everything and you're wearing yourself out. I think that, you know, and I look at my own life and I fall in the trap. I try to do too much. And like I said, you know, I'm preaching this sermon this week and looking at my schedule, and every single day was busy, being busy, doing good things. You know, trying to do things for the Lord. Trying to do things to reach people for Jesus Christ, but sometimes we just get too busy.